Thank you so much for being here on a Friday late afternoon, a kind of grim day, but it's an exciting conversation and a lot of cheer in the room. My name's Joseph Campana. I direct the Center for Environmental Studies, and I teach here in the English department. And I'm so pleased to be here for our Planet Now conversation. When I think about these conversations, I think about what they're for. Therefore, we're talking about urgent issues. Therefore, talking also to multiple communities and audiences, from the academy to well beyond it. And I can't think of many subjects that are so important to talk about right now, like food and food availability and the equities and inequities, as well as the sort of the impact. So we're excited for the conversation tonight. I just want to say a couple quick words before I turn things over to my excellent colleague, Sophie Moore, who organized this event and who will be directing everything tonight. I think it's important to sort of give a few thanks first. And I want to thank the team from the School of Humanities, Eric Grandquist, John Waterhouse, Chiliang Yu, who you'll sort of see here tonight, who are also making sure that this conversation is available to as many people as possible. Whenever we can, we want to try to create resources for anyone who can tune in either in the event itself or live later. So you'll find this later on our website, ents.rice.edu, and also on Rice's Humanities YouTube channel. I want to thank Weston Twardowski, who you may have corresponded with, who has sort of set everything up for so many of the elements up for tonight, and who works with the center and the Mellon Foundation funded Diluvial Houston project. We also want to thank the Mellon Foundation for their funding as we do the Schools of Humanities and Architecture, who host the Center for Environmental Studies. And then just quickly, lastly, I'll say two quick things. One, I said earlier that sort of our conversations are about important and sometimes unexpected collisions. I had the real fortune to be at Jūn, Chef Evelyn García's restaurant a few weeks back, and the first thing that arrived at our table was this wonderful collision of strawberries and pickles, two of my favorite things and things that I think a lot about because I grew up in strawberry season and was born in June in upstate New York. And I think it's a sort of way, too, that food is all about those incredible sort of collisions and combinations. And so I'm excited about tonight's conversation, but I also want to give a very big thanks to Sophie Moore, who has been over the last 2 years developing important conversations in the university and beyond it about food and food justice. And I can't sort of thank her enough for the incredible work that she does. So I want to turn it over to you now. Thanks, Sophie.
Great. Thank you so much. So thanks, Joe, for the introduction. Thank you to the Center for Environmental Studies and the School of Humanities for supporting this event. I'm so excited for this event for some reasons that I'm going to talk about shortly. I do think this event really is sort of a culminating event for my work for this year. Is really intended to connect my love of Houston and Houston's food culture with the work I've been doing with my students here at Rice and my colleagues, and also my farmer friends and my food world friends in the greater Houston culinary landscape. So I'm just going to give you a little overview of our plan for the evening. I'm going to introduce my co-panelists here, and then we'll just dive right into the discussion. So first we're going to have sort of a moderated panel discussion. We have some questions, but as you'll see, these folks all know each other and have been working together quite a long time, so it's a very informal type of discussion. We'll have a Q&A. Anybody who has questions will have the opportunity to ask those at the end. We're going to have a tasting of shrimp aguachile bite in the lobby afterwards, so we'll step out for that after the panel, and then weather permitting, we have a tour hosted by Alex Cho, who runs the Rice Urban Gardening Club in the Rice Holistic Garden. And so assuming it's not thunderstorming, we'll all walk over there after we're done with our bite, and somebody from the garden will navigate with us over there. And we can have a chance to just talk informally and maybe meet each other as we want. So about me, as Joe said, I teach here at Rice. I'm a postdoctoral fellow in environmental justice. I'm in the Center for Environmental Studies and the Humanities Research Center. I mostly teach, write, and talk about food justice and environmental justice, with a focus on Houston and the Gulf Coast, though I also spent a long time working in the Caribbean. But the reason that this panel is here is because I also spent a long time working in the food industry. So I've been a baker, I've been a prep cook, I have worked for many years at farmers markets, and of course, I love to eat. And Houston is an amazing eating city. And that's kind of what motivated me to bring this panel together. I also want to thank my food justice lab. They're all sitting in a row back there. I'm going to embarrass them. They're right there. They're the blushing ones. And these are my 8 students who have gathered together this year to just really try to explore Houston's food culture, to understand the landscape of the city, its culinary landscape, its food justice landscape. We've been on an adventure every 2 weeks where we've gone out in the city, we've eaten, we've visited farms, we've talked together, we've explored many different parts of the city, and really it was their enthusiasm and curiosity and their eagerness to explore and discover the city that inspired me to do this panel and to sort of keep going, bringing those interests together. So thank you to my lab. They're also going to be serving the bite later, so you'll get the chance to meet these amazing students. I'll be co-moderating with Missouri Wilkinson here on my left. Missouri is a server at Jūn and was previously produce manager at Planet Forward, where she's gotten to work with Rachel, Chef Evelyn, as well as the teams and the farmers who make up these organizations. Chef Evelyn, of course, you are all here because you know who she is. She is the chef and co-owner of KIN HTX with Chef Henry Liu. We'll say KIN's pop-up at Rice Village Market was the first food that I ate when I moved to Houston. I actually found it on Instagram before moving here, and I made a beeline right to there, and it was probably the first bite that I purchased upon moving here. And so this is 2.5 years later, this is very special to me. So now Jūn opened a couple months ago, right? 2 months ago. It's in the Heights. It's been very popular, right? Of course, you all know Evelyn has also cooked for years in New York City and in Houston. Was a finalist on the Houston season of Top Chef. We were all rooting for you. Her co-panelists are from Planet Forward and Whitehurst Farms. They're 2 longtime collaborators with Chef Evelyn. So we have Rachel Folkerts, who's the farm program director at Planet Forward here in Houston. It's an organization that manages 3 Planet Forward programs: farmer education, farm services, and volunteer and community engagement. I'm so excited to have Rachel join us. And then Michael Marchand owns and operates Whitehurst Farms near Brenham, Texas, with his wife, Leslie. Michael grew up in Longview, Texas, where his family has lived and farmed for generations. Whitehurst Farm includes a market garden, a livestock pasture. The farm sells organic vegetables, eggs, chicken, turkey, pork, and beef. So I'm so excited to have this group here. Please welcome everybody on this panel. So I wonder, maybe we could start if everybody just wants to give us a little introduction of yourself and the work you do, how you came to it. If there's anything about your personal story that you would like to share, that'd be a great place to start.
It's like all eyes. Yeah, well, I was born and raised in Houston. I left very young for school, not because I wanted to. So I moved to New York. I went to culinary school there, to the Culinary Institute of America, and that was like a almost 4-year program. And then I stayed another 7, working in New York, which is amazing about one multicultural city to another. There was just a lot of opportunities, and as a young cook, I just kept saying yes to everything. I was very excited. I just wanted to learn, and I always knew I was going to come back to Houston. I made it a purpose to like never even change my license. I was like, I'm coming back, and that just ended up being almost a 10-year trip to New York, and moved back in 2016. I feel like I was more mentally prepared with an idea of, kind of the food I wanted to cook and I wanted to create and the experience I wanted to create. And I always knew I wanted to do that in Houston. What is there not to love about Houston? I think it's not only such a welcoming city, I feel like the food scene is evolving quite quickly. And I think it was just really nice to see that, not only because I was from Houston, but to come back and know that it was so welcoming to my, fusion ideas of food, and being able to just showcase that, as a pop-up in markets, and people just being so welcoming, quickly found me through social media. And it was just really cool and heartwarming that my city was like that, knowing that I had left so long ago and I didn't know anybody, honestly. I left at 17. You know, everybody I knew in high school were like doing other things. No one really actually went the culinary route from like who I graduated with. So I didn't know who to reach out to. So coming back, it was just like, let me hit up the farmers markets and seeing what's happening with the pop-up scene and kind of getting back into it. And I mean, that was 2016, a few years ago. And then I opened a restaurant. But yeah, I think it was just really coming back to the city and kind of building these relationships and knowing that the city itself was just so welcoming that it made it very easy for me to kind of transition back into Houston. And yeah, I just started cooking. I've always loved it, so yeah.
I guess I'll go next. So my entry point into farming, the strongest entry point came when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Senegal, which is in West Africa, and I was an agriculture extension agent, which I qualified to do because basically I grew up in Iowa and I was around farms a lot. I had a job picking corn, and the U.S. government said, great, you can be an agriculture extension agent. And really during that time, I learned from the farmers in the small community where I lived so much about farming and connecting with the land, and saw firsthand in this tiny country on the border of the Sahara in Western Africa that these are the people on the front lines of climate change. They are seeing the changes, they are adapting to them in real time with no resources. And I loved everything about that community and the work I was doing, and was sad to come back to the US and wanted to just continue being able to do that work. I did a few other things in the interim, and then I moved to Houston because my husband is a chemical engineer, a common reason to arrive in Houston. And I happened to find Plant It Forward at that time. And Plant It Forward is a nonprofit organization that creates opportunities for new Americans in agriculture. So today we work with a network of about 60 new American farmers, and they all arrived to Houston as refugees. Awesome thing about Houston is it's very international, very welcoming, super strong economy, so there is lots of opportunity for new Americans. So Plant It Forward is specifically working with folks who arrive with refugee backgrounds. Most of the groups we work with are from Congo, Sudan, Burma are the main groups. And they have farming experience, and they want to establish farms in the US, and Plant It Forward works with them through that process. And we'll talk about all the challenges involved in that, but it's also awesome, and I love it, and I've met all these great people through that work, so that is my introduction.
Hello, everyone. I'm Farmer Mike, for short. I did not plan on being a farmer and did not start out that way like a lot of people do. I grew up in a small town. My mother grew up on a farm. The farm that she lived on, everything they grew was literally to survive. The chickens, the beef, the plants. They were, poor, so everything they grew, that's what they ate. When I was growing up, it kind of carried over. We hunted, we fished, not so much for a sport, but literally to have additional food that we could eat. And to me, it was just normal. When I grew up as a kid, it was just something that I thought everybody did. There were aunts, uncles, grandparents that had small backyard gardens or small gardens on their property, so we were always getting greens or green beans, a lot of the southern crops. And so it was always the staples that we had around. I just thought, again, was normal. In my town, there weren't a lot of restaurants. I remember when McDonald's first came there, if we got to go, once every 6 months, it was, a big treat. So for me, it's kind of been a long journey. When you live in a small town and you want something bigger. So I kind of followed the path that society tells you to follow, which is, make good grades, go to college, get a job in a big city, get a house in the suburbs, all that. And, I did all that. And I was successful at it. I owned a business in Houston prior to starting to farm. It was very lucrative. It was a great business, but I just always wanted and kind of longed for something more where I could see that I was making a difference, that I wasn't sitting in an office, sitting at a computer. I just kind of felt like I wanted the second part of my life to be different. So I thought, hey, farming sounds like a great idea when you're 45 and you've been sitting in an office for 20 years. And so there was, I guess, a couple of things happened. I was someone that kind of worked out and watched what I ate, tried to eat healthy. And I noticed when I would go to Costco and buy a bag of chicken breast that I was going to, prepare for the week. I was going to grill it, be able to eat all week. I kind of noticed that this bag, the color is a little bit different. This bag kind of smelled. I thought it out and I was like, this smells funny. Like something's changing, something's not right. And then I read a book by Michael Pollan called The Omnivore's Dilemma. And I would have to say that book really is kind of the key that changed my life, that put me here today. Because in the book, he profiled how we got basically the corn food that, corn is in everything. And it profiled Joel Salatin, who's kind of the grandfather of the past, grass-raised, regenerative farming movement that's going on today. And when I read Joel Salatin, his kind of profile and what he was doing, I thought, it's beautiful, that makes sense, I totally get that, and I want to do that. And so as someone who is, I guess, an entrepreneur at heart and willing to take crazy risk, I just said, let me sell my other business and put that money into farming and start a farm, and that's literally what we did. And so in the beginning, it became something that was just going to be a business. I didn't think about all the aspects around what I was doing at the time. I just thought, we're going to raise a bunch of meat chickens and sell them, and we're going to make $1 million, and it's all going to be great. And along the way, I started to understand the issues with small farms, animal welfare, which was not something that I really thought much about at the time, the additives and things that are going into not only human food, animal food, and just really a lot of the small farmers that are behind the scenes. They don't speak up for themselves. They just do what they do, realizing that those people needed a voice, and I was willing to be that kind of advocate or that voice for the people that you would most likely never hear about or never know about. So it's just became, again, kind of a assorted, mixed journey over time to how we got to this place. And so I look forward to answering some of the other questions and answering your questions and hearing what you want to know.
The struggles.
Thanks for those intros, everyone. So the three of you have really just dedicated your work to the development of our food culture and food scene in Houston and in the Gulf area. How would you say that the Houston food scene is distinguished, or what's distinctive about it, and how have you seen that change over the course of your work, over the lifetime of your work here?
Oh, go? Okay. I think I'm fairly new to the food scene. Like I said earlier, it is quite quickly, rapidly changing. I think, thankfully, on being shows like Top Chef and stuff like that, like we're definitely having the opportunities to be a brighter light in the city and kind of showcase that, you know, we're more than just a city in Texas, and that it's super, super multicultural. And I think that's what really makes Houston's food scene so special. It's just that it is a welcoming city, like I said, and I always say it because it is really welcoming, and I physically like experienced it when I moved back. But because of that, our food is just like, I feel like, I know I always have to say like the fusion because that's like a word that people understand quicker about food and like the food I cook currently, but it's really, it's what we have around, like the produce that inspires us, the flavor profiles of, you know, all these different cuisines, because we have all those restaurants in the city, because we have those people that have migrated here and just wanted to create a little bit, or at least kind of create a space that reminds them of their home. And then to us, that just becomes very normal. And I feel like the food, as it evolves, it's very easy for things to kind of like meld together, because to us, it just makes sense. I'm not trying to bring two different cultures together. I'm not trying to make, you know, a Mexican, Asian thing like work. It's just, it's around us, right? Like the flavors and working with farms, like these guys over here that are bringing different produce, because although our weather is crazy, we do get to grow a lot of cool things. And then me, you know, living in New York for a long time, like nothing's from New York, guys. Everything's shipped in, other than apples. And then you have like the hydro farms that are working. But other than that, there's a lot of things that don't actually grow there. So coming here to Houston and being able, as a chef, being able to kind of go to the farmer's market and know that, like, you know, when tomato season, which we get two, which is like, what? You know, we get 2 waves of tomatoes, guys. And okra season, right? Like, it's just so abundant. And being able to see that and be able to work that, like, definitely changes what happens with our food. And I think it's a combination of all of that, like the work that our farmers are doing for us, and then just having such different cultures in our city, that it just like things just end up melding together. And like I said, I dislike the word fusion because everybody just thinks it's like two things being forced together. But the food here in Houston, it just ends up combining and melding together because we're just surrounded by it. And then to us, it just makes sense. And I think, you know, us at the restaurant is just like us constantly trying to tell that to people. It's just like, you know, it just makes sense. It just makes sense for me to have, you know, this stir fry with morita chilies because I grew up eating that and I was next to, you know, on the weekends I used to eat Vietnamese food. Like, it just makes sense, and it's really cool to be able to kind of have like our own like food style, I guess. I really feel like Houston does have that. Because like you can go again to New York because I've been into these big cities, and then you have like, you know, they either have like fine dining or you have like the mom and pop, but I feel like Houston really does have like its own style because it's just a meld of all these different flavors, which is really cool, not only as a chef but as a consumer, because I get to eat all of this, and I'm so lucky.
I just have 2 piggybacking thoughts. I mean, I will agree strongly that Houston is so welcoming. So the food and farming culture here is almost weirdly welcoming. I mean, it's also, the farming community is very small, so that helps. I think there's no sense of competition, just of let's help them build each other up. And also, kind of from a farming perspective, we have an extra season in Houston that the North doesn't have. So the deep summer in Houston, July through October, is, you know, it's a season that doesn't exist in the North. And of course, we can grow through the winter, which obviously you can't do in Iowa. And so people that are coming from all over the world and lots of subtropical and tropical climates, and we can grow subtropical and tropical crops in the deep summer. And so that is, I think, distinctive, like, to the point that a lot of things don't grow in other places. In, a Houston farmer's market, you can find bitter melon and jute leaves and
Persimmons.
Persimmons and figs, papaya in a good year. So those are just my additional thoughts there.
Yeah, and I think kind of what Rachel said, we need each other. So our organizations are slightly different. Evelyn's a chef, she has a restaurant. But without super quality ingredients, which are honestly kind of hard to find, she can't be the best that she is. She's not serving what she wants to serve, which is the best possible quality food to her customers. And we need, as a farm, customers financially. And then in the case of Rachel and I, she has a different organization where her farmers may need some additional training and techniques that we use here now. We grow everything intensively, meaning that we would have a bed that's about 30 inches wide, 100 feet long. And instead of planting one item in a row down the middle and that's it, we'll plant 4 across, 6 inches down the row, there's 4 more, and so on, so that the entire bed is full. And what that does is that creates a canopy for all the life in the soil underneath, which is not typically how you find farms in America. You find commodity crops, corn, soybeans, cotton, whatever it is, that's this monoculture that does not feed the soil and the life and all the things that live there. And so this type of farming that we do, Rachel's brought her farmers out to our farm to do training. We all have gaps where she might grow something in a season. We might also grow the same thing, but we run out. So we work together, again, more as a co-op. And we need each other. We all need each other because, like you said, the farming community is very, very small. For a city that has so many million people, you would think there would be hundreds of farms around, and there's 20 maybe, if that. So cooperatively, it kind of takes all of us working together to be able to function. I think one of the questions, I don't know if I should jump the gun on it, but
You should go ahead to whatever you want.
one of the questions was, what do you think the general public should understand about food systems or farming? And I think if there's one thing you take away from here today, there is a fragility that people simply do not understand. The small farms are always hanging by a thread. 1 or 2 months can make a difference of the farm being there or not being there. Our farm produces about $250,000 a year in produce, eggs, pastured meats, and so on. We would be considered probably a very large farm, even though I think we're a tiny kind of microcosm. And I've been able to fund our farm in a way that most farmers have not been able to because I sold a business and I kept putting that money back in the farm, and that's just not normal. And so there is a fragility that we have, and there is a need to produce super high quality food for the people that want that type of food. If you're someone that's had disease or cancer or certain allergies and you need really highly quality clean food, it's really difficult to find. And so for us, there's a want to continue to provide this food because we know everybody. We know who we sell to. It's a personal relationship. And there is just, again, this kind of, hanging by a thread constantly to financially keep going. And so, again, someone like Evelyn who can bring awareness to local farms, who can take a local farm ingredient, make something special out of it, promote that, to the public. It all kind of works in a harmony where, again, we need each other, all the time.
Yeah, we'll say anybody can add on if they want to. We don't have to just do 1, 2, 3.
No, I mean, I guess for me, like you were saying, that we work together. For me as a chef, I feel like it's kind of responsibility to showcase that, where our product's coming from, how we're utilizing it, because there is a lot of people that do care, but somehow there's a disconnect of like, where is it coming from? How can I get it? It's like, for me, I feel like, well, go to the market, go to the farmer's market, meet your farmer, talk to them, and unless you're actively seeking that connection, it's, people kind of see a disconnect and they're like, maybe it's not so easy to get it or anything, or just like, try a little bit harder. But, for me as a chef, it's like, okay, how do I constantly put this out there? We have social media, it's very helpful. How do we use this tool to not only help myself, but help the farmers, and then keep this ecosystem constantly going, and utilizing kind of every tool we have. Because, yeah, it is, I remember, having the talks through the beginning of pandemic and being like, man, we don't know what's next. And I was like, I shut down. I was like, I can order for you for myself now. So it was really, hard to have those conversations and know that we just have to utilize the tools we have, and like, how do we constantly keep reminding people, like, hey, we're still here. Hey, we're producing, good food. And I think for us, or for me as a chef, it's just like constantly doing that and just being like, yeah, I'm cool, but this is where this is coming from. You should buy that for your home too, because, things just look pretty at the grocery store, but they're meant to look pretty. It's not really like that. There's wax, there's all these things on it, and it's like this kind of like fictional grocery store thing that's like, no, if you try a little bit harder, you can actually have really good product, and that actually make a difference to your body and your health. So I feel like for me, although we are very much, what is it called? Coexisting together, and how we help each other, it's, really trying to inform the people constantly and like, hey, this is something that's important, because, things are constantly changing and there's a lot of media and a lot of things being brought in front of you. So it's like, how do we constantly keep putting that? And it has to be a priority, to constantly be putting that into people's faces too. Be like, hey, remember where your food's coming from. And know that it makes a difference. It really, really does.
Well, since Michael brought up the fragility of farms, I thought I would sharpen the point. Since we're at a university, I figure you might like data. But, the USDA recommends, through My Plate, right, that you eat about half of your diet should be fruits and vegetables. Any guesses as to how much of their large amount of subsidy that they provide to agriculture, what percentage of that do you suppose goes to producing food and vegetables? Less than 10% for sure. Less than 1%. How much of the acreage of U.S. farmland, does anyone want to guess, is in fruits and vegetables? It's about 1/100 of a percentage. Which on the one hand makes sense because you can grow fruits and vegetables much more intensively than cattle. So it should be a fraction, and yet, if we should be eating, half of our diet fruits and vegetables, surely we can put some resources behind their production. And most farms in the U.S. are losing money and are only operating basically because they're operated by, I think of farmers as they're like artists. They are in the work because they couldn't do anything else, not because they make money doing it. And a lot of farms do what Michael is describing, where they have a farm income or other family money that they're able to put into the farm, or they exist based on subsidies, as in my home state, where farmers are subsidized to grow corn and soybeans, or paid to not grow through conservation programs. And so for the folks who want to grow the food that we should eat, the food that is delicious, fresh, locally grown food legitimately tastes so much better than grocery store food. But anyway, so the folks who are trying to grow it are getting no support, and it is a struggle. So that's the bright side of that is that we have a great community, and chefs like Evelyn who are in the public eye and able to promote the products a little more.
Good produce.
Yeah.
What we should be eating.
I mean, I think what y'all are bringing out is like a particular way that local food maybe means something different in the context of Houston, a city that is, 600 something square miles versus like Bay Area local food is a tiny geographic area that is surrounded by some like pretty idyllic farmland, right? And here you could drive for 2 hours and still be in Houston, right? And so the idea of, you have all mentioned two different forms of connection. So one is connecting to the land, and the other is connecting to community. And that has some different challenges in Houston because it's such a big, spread out city. And it's also very restaurant focused, I think, which is part of why, we're having this discussion is like, how are people who cook, how are chefs and people who cook professionally sort of a way to introduce consumers to the broader world of local food, right? And so if you say on your menu, this is from Planet Forward, maybe somebody will be like, oh, maybe I'll go check out the farmer's market, right? And if they go to the Planet Forward stall, right, there'll be somebody who really loves the produce that he's selling, helping to explain to people, you never tried this, like it's worth a try, right? And I've seen him persuade many, many people to try things that they've never tried before, which is beautiful. But I think, also connecting to the land is not something that we might think about in the context of Houston, right? Many people, if you say you live in Houston, they'll just kind of shrug and be like, oh, okay, that's nice, right? Nobody knows anything about it outside of the region often. And there's just such a deep diversity of cultures and food experiences to be had here. And this idea of like connecting to the land is something, like Evelyn said, oh, you're at the grocery store? Well, go a little bit deeper. Like, look a little bit farther. I live in the East End. We have Tommy Garcia Prats in our audience, right, who runs a farm in the East End, really close to my house that I found when I was out running. And I ran by it and was like, oh, what is this, a farm? Okay, cool. And so that kind of like element of discovery is something that I think we can really support in Houston, a city that's pretty full of adventurous eaters who like will drive over an hour to taste something that they want to try, who will very readily, as we said, the food community can be really supportive. So like, if you ever go to a new restaurant, you'll see all the other pop-up folks eating there at the new spot to support their community. And I think that's something really, really important about Houston's particular food scene. So I think I wonder, well, we should, I think, give the audience some time to ask their questions soon too. But I guess I just wondered if you all have anything that you want to sum up in terms of like your relationship or your message, like for Houston eaters or Houston consumers who are maybe wanting to do that going deeper work?
Yeah, for me, it's, I think, like, go to the markets, go to the farmers markets. And we personally go every Saturday, and I stock up on our things, and I actually, want to be inspired by what's out there and what's new, or, what's the new crop this week. So I really enjoy those trips. And I'm like, oh, I'm leaving the restaurant. It's nice. But yeah, I think definitely going to the market and meeting the farmers. Like they're excited for what they're doing. They're really passionate about what we're doing. And I think for me, since I'm just so passionate about what I'm doing, it's really cool to connect with them and have those conversations. And it's not just for people that cook, it's not just for chefs. They're excited to meet people and talk about what's happening, with our food and having those relationships. And I think it's really, like I said, I know I was like, try a little harder. Just go to the market, and then people are willing to have these conversations and educate, because I feel like for me, it's just like a constant, I want to educate people. I want them to know about our food, our philosophies and what we're doing, because, it's all evolving, and if you could be a little piece of that, I'd rather it be for the better. But yeah, go to the market, guys.
Oh, could I
Order
just
farm shares.
add something to that? Like, I think, your cooking videos, for example, like for folks who are primarily restaurant focused, they find it very delicious, right? But they need that extra step to be like, well, if I go to the market, what am I going to do when I get there, right? And so if you have somebody who they trust, like Chef Evelyn, to make something that is delicious, and you're helping them, through your social media presence or through your public appearances, like help folks understand, like you can do this at home, right? You can make something delicious at home. I think that's super important too. It's a way to like mobilize your public presence, and part of that is also like the message of Planet Forward as well, right? It's like we can connect to our local farmers, we can meet them, we can talk to them, we can understand their life histories and the experiences that brought them here to farm here, right? And I think that's really motivating to people. Okay, when they get to the market, then what are they going to do when they get there? Maybe they'll ask the farmer, what do you make with this? Or in your home country, what do people make with this, right? I think that's super important.
Yeah, and one of the things I would encourage you to do, because there is a big disconnect. We live in cities, we don't see farms around, but going back to the very basics of literally going to an actual farm. And when you get to the farm, look at the ground. You'll see animals, oh, that's cute, there's vegetables over there. But what does the ground look like that those animals live on? Do you see weeds in the garden? Because if you don't see weeds, someone's either really good at cultivating or maybe there's something else going on. If you come to our farm, you'll very quickly see that no herbicide is used, and we're terrible at weeding. But I think that kind of getting back to that, the basics of, okay, I'm eating this thing, I like this kind of diet, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to cook that. Where did it come from? How did I get it? Or how is it farmed? I think it's super important, because in everything there's shenanigans that go on. Food marketing is very powerful. Like I said, even in the animal feed, you just have to watch things. And so going to the farm, going and seeing a farm where the products are produced is important. How do you produce it? Does anybody know how long it takes to get a head of lettuce? How long it takes to grow a head of lettuce before you can eat it? Close, about 55 days. What about broccoli? How long does broccoli take? 100 days? Wow. Tomatoes? Anyone? Yeah, 75 to 100 days. So it's those kind of things that, again, when I talk about the fragility of being able to keep the farm going, we have to grow product or produce animals, have them harvested, packaged, and all that takes time. To get a meat chicken grown on pasture, it's about 10 weeks. Turkey, it's 4 months. An egg layer to go from chick starting to lay eggs is about 7 months. So if you have 1,000 egg layers, you have to finance and feed them for 7 months. And if you don't have chickens in your yard, chickens eat a lot of feed. A grass-fed cow is about 18 to 24 months. You're talking half of that. All those times that I've given you, it's about half that in the industrial world. So it takes a lot of money and a lot of time to get real high-quality food grown the right way, animal welfare, to make it available. So I would encourage you, first and foremost, go see Planet Forward, come see us, bring your friends. It's really important.
Ask the questions.
My addition to this would be, so the thing that helped me go deeper in terms of how I actually eating seasonally myself is having a farm share. And then I just had to, because I had a refrigerator filled with produce and I needed to figure out what to do with it. But obviously we have the ability to go to the grocery store and buy anything at any moment. And so for me personally, being constrained by, I already paid for this, I have this farm share, I need to use these things, kickstarted me figuring out how to cook with it. And then it stopped being, oh, dill is something that is sprinkled on food in a restaurant and something that I aggressively use in salads. So that was how I made that evolution in my own life.
So before we open up questions to the audience, we've been talking about our development as a community and the evolution of our food landscape in the Houston Gulf area. In your ideal vision, how would you envision the future of our food landscape? And what's your inspiration for that? And what are the barriers you see to accomplishing that vision?
She said, let's go deep. Yeah, I mean, I feel like what I was trying to say earlier, and I just said it too low, it was just, hoping that people ask the questions, ask where things are coming from, ask how they're grown. So I feel like for us, although we try to be as active and constantly trying to put this information out there, I hope that people also are not only just receptive to it, but also start asking the questions for us to be able to answer them and show them how things are grown and how things are taken care of and how much time it takes. Like, I mean, that's a lot of time for vegetables when for us now it's just so easy to just go to the grocery store and I could have it in 2 seconds. I don't have to wait 7 minutes. So it's just, it's the hopes that our work currently and trying to convey this information also gets kind of returned and it starts asking the questions for us to be able to showcase that and really start kind of bringing that gap or closing that gap because, corporate America just makes it so easy to be like, boom, it's magic, it's here. It just came out of nowhere. And it's perfect. So it's just, that's my hope. For me, is just to constantly work on that and try to put that out there. But the hopes is that people are more intrigued and want to be more involved. Because like we said, Houston is huge. Imagine if just a little bit more of the people were searching for these farms and searching for this product and are willing to learn about it. So, I mean, those are my hopes. And what I can do about it is just constantly just spam you guys with some stuff. And yeah, I mean, those are my hopes.
I would wonder if I could just add to the question a little bit. It's on the back of your sheet here. I think Rachel mentioned working with folks who are on the front lines of climate change. And I think part of thinking about that future of what our food landscape will look like is how are we dealing with a pretty rapidly changing climate. And like I said, when people think about Houston, they're not necessarily thinking of farmland, of agricultural space, but they probably are thinking of climate change, right, and of petro industry and how that affects our environment in the region. And so I wonder, in envisioning that future of food that is important to you, how do you think about changing climate, different environmental pressures? What kinds of adaptations or ways of thinking are important to you in that?
I think one of the things that we've done that's made a big difference is we can grow all year long here. It's very unique. So for someone who, our goal is to provide as much healthy, clean food as humanly possible to people at a cost that they can actually afford. Okay, so that doesn't mean that all of our meats are organic, which we would happily grow. If you want to pay $35 for a whole chicken, we'll do that all day long. But that's not most people. Most people can't afford that. So we're trying to find middle ground that we can produce enough food and do it consistently, year round. And so one of the things that we've done, and I am 100% not qualified in talking about any kind of actual science, but what I can say, as a farmer is this is an extremely hostile environment that we are in because we have the Gulf air, the warm Gulf air, hitting the cold air from the north and the dry air from the west, and it just creates havoc. So what we've done to try to mitigate the heavy rains, the droughts we see, again, this constant change, is we grow as much as possible under protective cover. So you would call that a greenhouse. We call it high tunnels, caterpillar tunnels, where we can control the environment more often. We can grow when it's dry because we have misting systems in there. We can grow in the winter because we can put sides on it and keep it warm. So those are like some of the things that we're doing to be able to grow produce year round. So again, whatever's happening in the climate, whatever the change is, which around here seems like it is different every 3 days. It just lets us grow that food consistently, and it lets us grow it more cost effectively because we're not losing crops, and we're able to grow, a bigger volume. So that's one of the things that we do. We also do animals. All the animals have some kind of housing or shelter, but it doesn't matter. Think of the worst rainstorm, you can think of, which was maybe last week. When it's like that, we still have to go out and feed. We still have to go out and take care of animals. It doesn't matter if it's raining. Every day at a certain time, those animals have to be fed, and there's a lot of them. And so it is, like I said, I feel like it's a very tough job. You better like it because you're never going to make a lot of money doing it. But it's exhilarating. It's dangerous a lot of the times, but it's good.
So I'll add that Houston's culinary landscape is already so diverse and delicious, and my vision would be that a small fraction of the ingredients going into creating all this amazing food would be grown locally, which is important because typically food that is grown locally, you're going to know whether or not it is respecting the people who do the work. You're going to know if the practices that are being used honor our land. And the farther away our farms are, the harder it is to know, the easier it is to ignore how we're growing. So I would envision that we have many more farms dotting our physical landscape in the city and surrounding the city. And frankly, the barrier to that is Houston's development patterns, which are the US's development patterns. But a farmer cannot possibly compete with anybody else for land. Anybody else can pay more than a farmer can pay for land. And until we grapple with that, this local food future is not going to be possible to build. So land access is my personal hobby horse. Come talk to me afterwards.
I think we have some time for questions from the audience. We have a hand mic we can pass around.
You can just talk loudly too.
We're recording the audio.
Oh, okay, so
Thank you.
Thank you. So the whole fragility of farms is something that's really interesting to me.
my grandfather was a farmer. He couldn't make enough to survive, right? So he was also a postman, that type of thing. And there was this movement of my father to go off to the Naval Academy. And then, you know, I went to college after that. And then my kids are going to college after that. And there's further and further and further from the farm. And it used to be something where you could pass on this knowledge and pass on this expertise. And I just feel like we've built this huge swath of people who are not connected to this at all anymore. And is there, not just appreciating farmers markets, but is there a way to make this career valued again? Is it a way to make it, you know, appreciated, or something that people want to aspire to, even though it's hard? A lot of things are hard. Being a professional basketball player is hard, right? But people still aspire to do that sort of thing. How do we like make that cultural shift to bring people back to wanting this as a profession?
Well, I think one of the movements that you see now with all the people that want to be homesteaders, that's a real thing. You know, there's just so much craziness going on in the world, and people just want space, and they want to be able to be more self-sufficient. But I think one of the things that we've tried to do is we've tried to, I guess for lack of a better description, incubate or help other people get started. And that might mean selling, you know, some of our pig stock. We keep a closed herd of a certain breed. We don't bring in outside animals to avoid disease, things like that. So selling our piglets, selling layers. You know, right now there's we get calls constantly, can I buy some chickens? You know, it might be 3 chickens, it might be 20 chickens, but everybody wants a chicken now. And so helping people to get started. But I think one of the, I guess I would call it a demographic. There are a lot of young professionals that are very smart. They're young enough, they could at least get started in farming. You know, maybe one of them's working, or they've been working, you know, in a good professional job, and they've got enough money to kind of start something on their own. There's a lot of that going on. And those are the ones that are kind of able to see it from a business standpoint, make a business out of it, understand they need to produce a certain amount consistently year-round, you know, to make it a business that can feed a family of 4 or 6. And, you know, maybe somebody homeschools or whatever it is. But I think that is occurring. And I think it's just not something that, you know, you have a big circle of friends and you hear people talking about, but people want to be self-sufficient. They do want to eat more healthy. They do want to support, you know, local where they can, but you have to do a little bit of work. You know, it's one of the problems that we have is we can produce great quality food, but we have a logistical problem of getting the food to you or getting it into Houston. We're an hour and a half away. And so if a farmer can stay on a farm and there's outlets for those goods, you know, great. But if there's not, in a case like ours, you have to do work to be able to get our food. You know, Rachel's close by. You have different drop points for your CSA? You know, so you can get her produce in places. For us, you know, maybe it's a case where you get your friends together. Hey, we're going to order from a local farm. We're going to go pick up all the meat. Come to my house at 5 o'clock on Sunday. We'll distribute it, you know, all the orders. I mean, things like that. It's literally a person by person, you know, kind of battle that has to occur to kind of get that change going and to get the movement going. It's going to come from a local level. It's not something the government's going to solve. It's something that we have to do locally. I didn't used to think like that. I didn't used to think that. I just never thought about it. I just thought I'm going to produce food. It's going to sell, but it doesn't. It has to come from a very small grassroots group. You know, locally, it's when you ask me what is local, it's literally to me now like neighbor by neighbor. I'm growing food for my neighbor because I know you. You know, you didn't get my stuff at a grocery store and you didn't know where it came from. I know who you are. I know what you like. A lot of what we produce, you know, it sells out quickly. But if I know that, hey, this person likes turkey necks, and this person likes, you know, breast, bone on, you know, on the bone, skin on, or this person can take a pig head and make something out of it.
I'm that person.
That's one of the things about Evelyn that's amazed me is, hey, I got these pig heads. I don't have the space to store them. Can you use them? Yes, I can use them. You know, like that's special. Mm-hmm. So again, it's just it's a lot of pieces. But I think it is important, like, again, person by person. Tell your neighbor, tell your friend, I saw this guy, he's an actual farmer. You know, there's a real farmer came, whatever. Hey, Rachel grows these vegetables right here in town. You know?
So to the question of, how to get more people into farming, was that kind of the question?
Yeah, like how do we isn't maybe we can actually have the land be available and have it be priced fairly and not have it be.
Yeah. So on most things, I'm a firm believer in bottom-up grassroots change. But in this, I think that fundamentally, people will farm when there's money in farming. And until there's money in farming, only a few freaks will want to do it. Yeah. And so, we have we have a history as long as this country of devaluing agricultural labor. And we have, since in the 70s, it was the explicit goal of the USDA to make food cheap. So we have devalued agricultural labor and we have cheap food. So those things are never going to result in people seriously wanting to farm with, except for the dedicated, passionate few. We could shift what we subsidize through the Farm Bill as a starting point. And food probably needs to be a lot more expensive than it is.
Mm-hmm.
With the farm bill though, if you're subsidizing corn less and fresh fruit more, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Corn is king.
Corn is king.
It's all right.
Hey, I'm just curious on hearing y'all's thoughts on where reducing meat consumption can help fight climate change, perhaps. You mentioned that it takes 24 months to grow a cow. How many pounds and pounds of feed is used to get that cow to full growth, And, in America, I feel like there's a focus on eating meat in every meal, whereas that might not be a focus in other countries. Just want to know y'all's general thoughts on where reducing meat consumption can come in and what y'all are doing in that aspect.
I cook a lot of vegetables. I think, maybe 75% of our menu is vegetables.
Very veg heavy.
Very veg heavy. And that's a personal choice. I love vegetables. Meat's great, but I feel like for me, as a chef and as a creative, I think I have to try harder with vegetables because people they're just like, steak, right? Chicken. So we put an effort to make vegetables not only seem but taste better. I feel like as a just general thing for me, it's putting more vegetables on the menu and showcasing them differently, where people are more intrigued, about our charred carrots than our lamb dish. Thank you. But yeah, I think it definitely, it's also hard in Texas, right? Because it was just like, where should I go eat steak? And I was like, and where should I go eat barbecue? And I was just like, we have other stuff, I feel like especially when people come and visit Texas and Houston, their first thing is like, where should I go eat barbecue? Where should I have a steak? Where should I go eat vegetables? That'd be nice. That'd be a nice change. But I think for me, what I can do and what I am doing is that, more of my menu is vegetable than meat. And what we use local and we try to, get people excited about vegetables because I love them. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would say is, we have cows, and we don't overstock, so I don't have a herd that's too big. They have plenty of land. I used to mow, so let's say I have 10 cows in an area that's about 15 acres. I used to have to mow that with a tractor about every 3 or 4 weeks, because the weeds would go from nothing to literally this tall, and some of it was invasive. We just don't want that. And I think about the time it would take me to mow that 15 acres with a 10-foot mower. So I had a tractor and a 10-foot mower. The amount of time, the amount of diesel fuel. So when I think about it that way versus what my cows are burping out, it's not even a thought. But the other thing that I didn't realize when I became a farmer is I spend more time driving around to pick up feed, to pick up meat, to pick up whatever supplies I need. Probably spend about 25 hours a week in the car driving, which is more time than I spend producing on the farm. And when you think about all of the goods that come from California, Mexico, all the places they come from, what's shipped in from South America, there's a whole lot of transportation in there that, again, it kind of goes back to if we were doing this locally, and we can, just a matter of making some changes, how much of that, again, really spewing toxic whatever in the air, could we get rid of? What difference would that make? It'd make a whole lot more difference than what's going on, with a cow eating grass and so on. But that's a good question.
Yeah, I'll just add, fundamentally, there are landscapes where it makes complete sense to raise cattle, and there are the Western U.S., right? And so it's good for that environment. Many farms function better when they have animals on them to provide manure, and you're creating this whole ecosystem inside the farm. So certainly, meat is not the enemy to environmental sustainability, but it takes a long time to raise meat well. So I do try to only eat meat that I've bought from another local farm. So just that's how we think about it. Definitely not. We're vegetable farmers. We're not anti-meat. There's a place for it.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to why, again, I want to invite you to our farm to see it in person, because the different animals that we run across the farm leave a different footprint, well, literally, but they also have a different impact to the ground. All of the animals are producing fertilizer, let's call it. And that fertilizer is amazing how well it works. But as Rachel mentioned, all of these kind of work in sync and harmony if it's not one type of plant, one type of animal. They work symbiotically. And when we have vegetables that it's time for them to come out and get pulled out, I'd love to make my own compost, only I need about 3 or 4 18-wheeler loads a year, so I can't make that much. But everything that gets pulled out of our garden beds goes to some animal. It goes to the pigs, it goes to the chickens. We make cold pressed juice. The scraps from when we are prepping that juice, the bigger scraps go to pigs. The pressed pulp is really fine. It goes to chickens. And so, again, all of this kind of works, at least on our farm, in a way that's really beautiful. And you can look at the grass. You can look at the land. That's what I'm saying about when you go to a farm, look at the ground. If you see animals raised on dirt, that's not good. They need to be on some kind of a grass. But this is why, again, it goes back to the beginning of where's my food coming from? How's it raised? I didn't know 95% of this before I started farming. I was just go to the store, go to Costco. I would buy good food, but again, it's kind of a long journey.
Does anybody have one more question?
I haven't been to June, so I'll apologize for that because it's on my list. But do you put anything on your menu about the source of your food?
Currently, no. It's very just this is what the produce,
yeah.
whatever. I mostly honestly use social platforms. to show that we're picking up our vegetables, to show, like the action of us actually picking things up and showing us, produce it. And I think for me, at least, it resonates more with people that they see me actually doing things and that they see us at the market and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just the way I think that's worked for me. And yeah, but there's a lot of vegetables on there. I have a very minimal menu too. I tell you straightforward what you're getting. I'm like carrots, cheese, and egg. Yeah, that's my menu.
I'm sure some people think it's pretentious to say, oh, this came from this farm and this came from this farm, and carrots.
It'll be a very long menu, I think.
Yeah. I just thought it might be interesting. Okay, thanks.
So I think we're gonna head out for our tasting shortly, and everyone will have an opportunity for some informal conversation. So if you have something that you want to say or ask, we can definitely have an opportunity for that. And so in just a couple minutes, I think we have enough for everybody. We'll have the shrimp aguachile out there, and a couple minutes we'll head out there, or we'll head out there now. Y'all will head out there and get your bite shortly. And thank you so much to our panelists and the co-moderators.
Thank you.